Being in education and being a conservative, where do you stand on school choice?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I ran the first time, I was younger and I was technically a public school teacher. And so I think a lot of people just assumed that I was liberal. And I am a conservative. I said that. So my wife teaches at charter schools. I went to a private school early on when I lived for a few years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I'm still a Steelers fan. Although I've had to back away from that since the Super Bowl a few years ago. But I went to a charter school and I went to a public school. And one common misconception, so I'm a school choice supporter. I'll just say that right off the bat. One of the common misconceptions about school choice is that, oh well, it's only private, it's only charter, and it's like, no, it's not only those, it's having the choice, and that includes public. And I've taught kids civics. I've been a school administrator now for not too long, but every child learns differently. And we have to provide options. Not every student fits into these cookie cutter learning styles. And so we have to provide options for students to learn. And I don't think that's controversial. Like when it comes to education, it's so easy to get caught up in everything else besides the kids, right? But the kids are what matter, right? And we have to give them that opportunity. So, my wife taught at Paradise Honors. Now she teaches at, ALA. And it's funny because I'm probably more conservative than her. But, I think the other part of it for me is like, I feel like that God has called me to be at a public school because you need, again, people in all places. Like you need people, I believe that my number one mission on earth is to bring people to Christ. And I know that working at a public school, it's more of a challenge, not because of the setting, but because you can't openly talk about that type of stuff. And so you're encouraged to kind of like be an example, be there for kids. But I love the idea of more options for students. Um, I've always worked at public schools. I will say, like, working in a public school, there's a little more structure. Charter schools can be awesome. And I think there are also some charter schools that kind of give the rest of them a bad name, and that's unfortunate too. So, and then obviously private schools, um, are kind of like you have to pay and it's like private tuition. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem. Like, I don't see why someone would kind of like oppose that. It's about the kids, and I think some teachers will say like, oh well, I've heard this argument. Well, charter schools come in, and all the high scoring kids go to the schools, and our test scores drop, and it's like, well, then we got to work harder. We've got to work harder with what we've got to help these kids succeed. But I'm never going to tell. I mean, I'm never going to tell a parent. I don't have kids. I mean, I've worked with kids, but parents are the experts on their kids. As educators, we do have experience in education, but parents, I would say, know best for their kids. And so we've got to support that. And as educators, I'm going to teach when I was a teacher, obviously, but I'm going to teach whoever I have in my classroom and I'm going to help them grow as much as possible no matter what. And I think a lot of teachers, for the most part, even those who aren't like huge fan of charters because like they're kind of competitive, do really care for the kids that they have. And when the push comes to shove, they're going to have their students' backs regardless of who's in their classroom. So,
I just really feel like school choice just adds to the competitive level of education.
hmm
I truly believe competition is needed in so many areas just to make things so much better.
hmm
With everything happening, even in the last month, it feels like ESA has really ramped up the back and
hmm
forth politically. Do you feel it's at risk?
You know, I don't know exactly. I feel like there's been it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are some protections like for ESA, like for it to get removed. I think they've tried to kind of future proof it and put things in place. I think you would for sure have to have, um, I think for it to get replaced, either you would have to have, it's very popular in Arizona, so you'd have to do a ballot initiative. I don't think that would pass, because I think a lot of people use charter schools, and if you take it away, you're removing learning opportunities for children. And I mean, if somebody wants to support that, be my guest, but I couldn't stomach supporting something like that personally. But I think you'd have to have a combination of things, and that starts with a trifecta in the state government. Obviously we have a Democrat governor, Katie Hobbs, currently, but we have Republican legislature, so we haven't had a ton get done. But if you had, you would have to have, a Democrat majority in the Arizona House, in the Arizona Senate, and you'd have to have a Democrat governor. But even then, I think you'd have to have a few more because I think even some of the more moderate Democrats realize the value of this, charter school concept as an option for students. And so even then, like I remember when they were passing Obamacare, it was like 15 years ago now, but there was a lot of Democrats who opposed it. They were like, look, like I love the idea of, healthcare and whatever, but like this, there are certain things in this that I just, what I mean? So even Democrats opposed it. So, but I mean, you never know. Like you see states shift, and I don't think that, I mean, I think Arizona, I don't know, like we've always kind of been a conservative state, but I think we've shifted. I don't know if we're necessarily a swing state. We just have a lot of independence. But I think independents are generally, I would guess, if you poll them, supportive of ESAs. Now, I think where it gets, you might have a little people kind of talking on both sides is, one thing people like to do to attack ESAs is they like to take, one or two people who, do take advantage of the system and use the funds, for something they shouldn't. And there's a whole conversation now, and you have some proponents who want to limit on it, but you limit it, which obviously is one side of looking at it, but then it's also a slippery slope. It's like if you start rolling back, that's like where does it stop? I think some people, I'm not gonna get into the whole gun control thing, but like I'm a Second Amendment supporter, but like sometimes when they take a look at that, it's like, oh, we just want to do this, but it never stops there, right? It keeps going, and there's more and more and more. And so, anyways, is the program perfect? Like nothing's perfect. There always could be improvements made, but I'm hopeful that it sticks around. I'm not. I will say I'm not a fan of you know taking away from any certain type of education to fund a different one. I think that we've got to support all of them because there are a lot of kids, in public schools as well. But but yeah, I think we're safe. I mean, do you know is did the legislature? I would say the other thing too is like we need good Republicans in education. There are very few. I don't want to say Republicans like Republicans with education experience, but there are very like there's a lot of people who have like served on school boards. We need, and I would love to do state legislature. I cannot live off of $24,000 a year. My house payment's like 3 grand a month, so I literally would go homeless. But you need like Matt Grass. Obviously, he's in a more of a swing district, so he's conservative, but he's a little more moderate. But he has actually experience in the classroom. A lot of time you have Democrats in the legislature who have experience in the classroom. You have Republicans who have experience on school boards. I think there are certain realities that you only can understand if you've kind of been in the classroom. And so not everybody needs to be in the classroom to be a state legislator, but I think having that experience is important. Shelley Boggs, for instance, in a school superintendent for Maricopa, like she had experience, teaching in the classroom. She had experience on the school board, and now she's in a position that's political and education, and I don't. That sounds like a tough job. So
You make a really good point. And the other one is, I don't know if you know Pam Kirby.
I've
Uh,
heard the name. Yeah.
okay. So she's kind of a school boards expert. And my question for her was, a lot of people think of school boards, they think you need to be either a teacher or have that education experience. But a lot of
I think
times,
a parent is super qualifying. Like you can be a parent too. You need people across. Absolutely. Yeah.
But being a governing board member is a volunteer opportunity as well. And you truly have to have a passion for the youth of our community. And I think that our governing board members that are members of the coalition, they draw on that passion, knowing that the youth of today are the future voters, They are our future caregivers. They're going to be taking care of me and you at some point. And they really are the future of our country. And so our focus at the coalition is on parental and family involvement. It's on academic achievement, accountability, and transparency.
Right. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of times conservatives are hesitant to be on school board. I don't know if there's just a stereotype or just a general consensus that maybe school boards or are more of a liberal opportunity for people. But I
Yeah, I
think
don't
there's
know.
a lot of opportunity there on school boards for conservatives to get more involved too.
Hmm.
Do you find it difficult to find conservatives to run for school board?
You know, it's not difficult. I think it's hard in that many of our volunteers, they also have full-time jobs. And being a governing board member is a full-time job in and of itself. And what I have a boot camp that we have been running for 3 years. It's 2 hours, it's free, and it's demystifying what is the role of a school board member. And what I say in that boot camp is it is whatever you make it. And if you have 10 hours a week to give, that's what it is. If you have 40 hours, that's what it will be. And I have served with individuals who you could tell never opened their governing board packet, never read the agenda until they sat on the dais. And then I've served with other people who you knew they were working 50 hours a week, meeting with staff, meeting with community members, doing their own research on the side. And obviously, the more you can put into it, the more you get out of it.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think it's gotten better. I think there's been more of a push and people are kind of understanding how important I would say, and I'm biased, but I would argue that like local government has way more impact on your day-to-day life, whether it's city council, school boards, than the stuff on Fox News or whatever station, you decide to watch. Like as far as like roads, you're driving on, schools you're in. I mean, I mean, the school board has a ton, I don't want to say power, but it's like I don't think people realize. And yes, you need both. It's all hands on deck, right? You need people, you need parents, kids. You need people who have a little bit of political experience, too, because, unfortunately, I mean, you don't have to, but it's like, there's been people who have learned, like Heather Rooks in Peoria, she was kind of like that mom advocate, and now she's kind of seeing the other side of it, right, too. And so you have to kind of like learn that. And now she's got two new members who came in, I think, this year. Um, Jeanette Bowles. There's two of them. I can't remember.
Mhm.
She endorsement stuff, and so now she's in that role too, where she's been a mom, but she's also been an elected official, and so you have to kind of like kind of bring them up to speed, help them understand like how it works, and because it's a different way of thinking, and I think you understand that too. Um,
Well, and I've
yeah.
I've always said school board, if you are going to run for something and you want to have an impact, it's school board. I mean,
Hmm.
think about it. Good schools equal good neighborhoods,
Yep.
and that
Property
impacts
values.
property
Yeah. I
values,
mean.
everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, just huge opportunities there. Let me ask you, what's next for you in your career? Do you enjoy being on council? Is there something else that you want to try in life? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to to act too excited about being, I try to say elected official, but like politician, like, I don't know. And I think I get that question a lot just because I'm younger. Councilman Haney, he's about, he's 30, they're just turned 31 too. Um, and I feel like the technical answer you're supposed to give is, I'm focused on, my residents and that's all I care. And it's like, who knows? This could be as far as I make it. I'm blessed to have, served 2 terms in the Surprise City Council. Maybe who knows? You're never guaranteed anything. I could get voted out next year. I don't think it's going to happen. But you never know, right? You can't take it for granted. I have a passion for local government. And so who knows, what the future can bring. I'm gonna, try to put my head down. Obviously, I've been pretty, I've made it, not made it pretty far, but just like I've been in education for 10 years, and obviously now I'm a school administrator, and then I also serve on the city council, and this year I'm vice mayor. And so it's kind of like I don't know which career is going to, right now politics does not pay the bills. I think we get 26,000 on the city council, and school board gets paid nothing. I think it's probably the most, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but just like the most thankless, either that or state legislature, because you can't really have another job with it. But who knows? I mean, right now I plan to, I plan to run for reelection, and I haven't really thought out far past that. After this next election, if I serve the full 4 years, that'll be 10 years in my position, and I think that that's probably more than enough, to be honest. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I never wanted to be a career politician. But it's tough too. Like, I think people want full-time elected officials, but they don't want career elected officials, right? And so,
That's like the balance.
and so there's challenges. I will say though too, like you need elected officials with experience because it takes a while to learn stuff. Now, we don't like to admit that, but it does. I mean, I think it took me, you know, well, I don't know. Like, I mean, I had to run a re-election campaign, typically in a 4-year term, right? You spend the first 2 years learning, and the next 2 years, not campaigning, but like you're gearing up, right? And so I did a 2-year term right off the bat. So I'm learning, and also I'm like, I also don't want to be like voted out too. And so, but anyways, yeah, I would love to continue to serve, if that's something that voters want. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of respect for our state speaker, Steve Montenegro. I know. I mean, that's another thankless job too, because you get, the credit and the crap for everything that, gets voted on ever. But he's our state representative out here in Surprise. And so there's that. He's kind of, I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean, I've learned in my whole 31 years, which is not a ton, is that every time I try to plan something, God has a better plan. And it's not maybe better on what I think is better, but it's better in the long term. And so if this is as far as I go, like I'm blessed. I'm so beyond blessed, but it's not incumbent on me. I mean, I will say that one of the things that motivated me to get into politics was not good elected officials. It was, I want to say, bad elected officials. It was elected officials I don't, and I saw in 2018, when I saw AOC get elected, and I saw that I think the Republican Party has two weaknesses. I think we beat each other up in primaries too much, that they're so damaged when they go into generals, they're at a disadvantage. Like, um, and I think we don't do a good job at recruiting younger candidates. And by younger candidates, I don't mean, 20 and 30, like, my age. I mean, like, there's a difference between 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, you know? And so I, thought to myself, and I was like, we need people on the other side. Obviously, she is probably the complete opposite for me. And I was like, kind of why not me? I was like, eventually, we have a lot of older people in the Republican Party, and so we have to have people who are in a position to take up the mantle, who have experience, who, and not just political experience, but like experience, like, on the job as well too. So
Well, I'm excited to see what you do next.
we'll
And
see.
yeah, best wishes and
Yeah,
good luck to
thank you.
you.
All right, you have a good weekend.
All
Enjoy
right, you
tomorrow.
too. All
Yep, see
right,
ya.
thank you.
Yep, bye.
Bye.